Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this new episode of Deep Space Wine, where me, Kat, and my friend Tim look at each episode of Deep Space Nine in order and go through it scene by scene, raising everything that we think is interesting about it. I'm doing so from the perspective of someone who's never watched Deep Space Nine before. I watch each episode just before we have our podcast. Tim has seen every episode back in the 1990s when it was first broadcast, so he knows considerable more about it than I do. And I'm bringing my person in their 40s, 2020s perspective to it, entirely unwarrantedly. Tonight's episode will be Season 2, Episode 15, Paradise, which was first broadcast on the 14th of February, 1994. It was directed by Corey Allen. The story is by Jim Trombetta and James Crocker. The teleplay was by Jeff King, Richard Manning, and Hans Beimler. I'll just give a quick content warning before I pass over to Tim for our episode summary.
Thank you.
This episode involves cultish behavior, psychological manipulation, including an attempt at manipulating someone in sexual acts which do not end up taking place, and some control in a racialized context, a white woman manipulating and tormenting a black man, as well as lying and some non-graphic torture. On that happy note, over to you, Tim.
Thanks very much, Kat. And as always, I appreciate very much the content warning at the top. As always, we do our level best to keep you, our audience, very much in mind. So, we hope you find that helpful. So let's kick us off. As always, our thanks to Wikipedia for these excellent episode summaries. Please support your local free online internet resource of information in these challenging times. So, whilst on a reconnaissance mission in a runabout, O'Brien and Sisko discover human life signs on an uncharted planet. Beaming to the surface, they discover that a duonetic energy field has disabled their electronic devices and they cannot return to their runabout. They meet Joseph and Vinod, part of a group of colonists who became stranded 10 years ago in a similar fashion. The leader of the colonists is Vinod's mother, Alexis. Prior to being stranded, she was a philosopher, critical of humans' dependence on technology. One of the colonists, Meg, is dying and could be cured with the runabout's medical supplies, but Alexis forbids Sisko and O'Brien from attempting to contact the ship. She tells them that they will have to earn their keep by working in the field. And while they work, a young man named Stephen is released from a metal box in which he was imprisoned for stealing a candle. That night, Alexis sends a colonist named Cassandra to attempt to seduce Sisko. When Sisko confronts Alexis, she assigns him to stand watch the rest of the night. Meanwhile on DS9, Kira and Dax are searching for Sisko and O'Brien and discover their abandoned runabout travelling aimlessly and attempt to retrace its source. Back on the planet, Meg dies and Alexis accuses O'Brien of defiling her memory by trying to activate his technological devices. As his commanding officer, Sisko is placed in the punishment box. Once his punishment period is over, Alexis offers him water if he will change out of his Starfleet uniform. Wordlessly, Sisko staggers back and puts himself back in the punishment box. Meanwhile, O'Brien is able to use an improvised compass to locate the origin of the geonetic field and discovers a generator buried beneath the sand. Vinod finds O'Brien and shoots at him with a bow, but O'Brien manages to outsmart him and brings him back to the village. O'Brien opens the punishment box with his now functional phaser and reveals to the colonists that the field was artificially created. Alexis admits that she created the geonetic field, but she justifies her actions on the basis she believes they allowed the colonists who survived to discover their true potential. When Kira and Dax arrive, Sisko and O'Brien assume the colonists want to come with them, but Joseph announces that the colonists have chosen to stay, although they clearly have not been consulted. I'm not sure who wrote this summary. This is the first time I'm reading it, but they clearly have some views. I thought Wikipedia was meant to be unbiased, but here we go. O'Brien and Sisko beam up to the runabout with Alexis and Vinod. After they leave, two young children stare wistfully at the point where the four vanished. Plot summary over, and we will now move into the section where Kat and I kind of share our feelings at the top of the episode before we dig through it forensic detail and come up with some conclusions at the end. So, Kat, after all that waffling, allow me to hand back to you, please. Let's get some
Thank you for that summary, Tim. And yes, thank you to Wikipedia for its usually very accurate. I think this one was accurate, but as you say, not entirely unbiased. They take a view on what's happening in the episode, which is interesting of them. But yeah, I think overall this episode it's a good short sci-fi story. I think it's
Yes.
well delivered. There are some things I really like about the way it's been plotted and the way that some mentions of things early in the episode come back towards the end of it. It doesn't especially excite me. The episodes that I really love are the ones where we get the main cast together talking, banter, humor, development of their characters, whereas this really is a Cisco and O'Brien episode, and they spend a
Massively.
lot of it separated. It is far more about the community and the people in it, who I assume we will never meet again, than it is about our peeps. So it's a very good episode. It's enjoyable, but I don't think it'll ever be one of my favourites.
I can understand that, Kat, definitely. I think the writers of this episode set out to tell this story, and the few members of the cast, because this infamously doesn't have any Quark, any Odo, any Bashir, any Jake. The few members of the cast that we do see are just along for the ride. They're here to react to and be almost our audience surrogate in it all.
Yeah.
So, whilst there are some good set pieces and some really kind of standout visual moments, some storytelling moments, it is an odd attempt, I think, to put a Star Trek veneer on what you correctly identify as just a good generic sci-fi story. I think what sells me on it are some excellent acting. Alexis is a fantastic antagonist. We had a little discussion about, where you can place this kind of character, this villain, if you will, in the kind of Star Trek pantheon of character subtypes and archetypes. I think she's good, and I think she's well acted. I remember at one point watching and going, "You are a well-intentioned extremist with emphasis on the extreme and less emphasis than you think you have on the well-intentioned."
Yes,
but
that's a very good characterization of it. Yeah,
thank you. I think that's what she was going for, but massively out of proportion.
Yeah, and I think this episode really does well the showing, not telling. We learn that she is evil. There's some commentary from Cisco about her, but for the most part, we see her fully believing what she's saying and increasingly leaning into behaviors that we do not approve of. I think the episode has a lot in it that they don't just tell the audience this is a bad thing that's happening.
No.
We're left to notice and react to it ourselves. I think it's deceptively. I think it's deceptively well written. It seems like quite a simple story, but there's a lot in it that is very subtle and very well done.
Yes, absolutely. I would say it's also paced very well.
Absolutely.
Everything happens on a steadily increasing beat of just, oh God, it's worse. Oh God, it's worse. I see in the chat there, Indoor Cat saying there were some hard moments to watch in this episode. There are. We'll get into them. As always, I feel like the ending comes a little too soon. Like, I think there could have been a bit more resolution or discussion, but I feel like they were just like, listen, we're at mark. We've just got to end it here. And so people beam away. And, that final shot is, well, maybe there will be changes in the community. So, but that is such, God, I'm boring myself the amount of times I've made that complaint. At least nobody was summarily executed without trial. We can give thanks for that, which is something we've had a problem with twice. It's strange it's happened twice, but there you go, in Star Trek of all things. So, I think there were good moments. I think this is otherwise, I came away thinking this was a decent episode, very, very run of the mill. This is mid-season filler. Not in a bad way.
I'd agree. I think that given that it is Deep Space Nine, it is Deep Space Nine quality. I think that everything that's in it is. It's similar to the episodes around it. It is very good. It's very entertaining.
Sure.
It's not an episode I would throw away for disliking it, but just because it doesn't tie into a larger story arc or the character's development. Yeah, I would. If I set it aside for any reason, that would be it. Not because I don't enjoy this episode per se.
That is such a good point. I think that's one thing that we have definitely discovered we enjoy a lot. Routine reminder, no spoilers, please. Cat has not seen beyond this point in DS9, so please don't spoil anything for them. But I think learning about our crew, our characters, is definitely something we really enjoy. We really enjoy that, and there's not a lot of scope for this. There's a little bit of character building at the beginning of the episode, and then everything just gets scrapped apart from a nice conversation between Dax and Kira in the middle. That's it. It's very scripted.
We get some nice insight into Cisco as a person.
Yeah, it's true.
Which is warranted. I think Jim Trombetta, the person who wrote the story, said that he was glad to have some Cisco at this point.
Yes.
As we've commented, there hasn't been much of him
Not
in
since
this season
Second
so
Sight,
far. He
was
has
it?
just been there to comment on what the other characters are
Yeah.
doing. So it is nice to have some Cisco-led action in this one. And one other thing I wanted to flag up at the top is that the episode touches on a lot of sociological and philosophical questions, which are fascinating, but that neither I nor I'm sure you'd agree, Tim, are really qualified to discuss at length. There's cult behavior, there's how authority is imposed over others, the advantages and disadvantages of independence from an overarching government.
Yep.
When I was writing my notes, I kept wandering into paragraphs long tangents about authority, control, and sociology and what the episode has to say about them, but I haven't studied these subjects. My opinion is not valuable enough for it to be worth my rattling on for 2 hours about the sociological implications of this episode. So I've tried to cut out the majority of that. We'll still have some commentary and we'll still give some tipsy renditions of what we think about it. But if I start waffling about Hegel, shut me up, because I've never read Hegel. I've read a webcomic that he was mentioned in.
Thank you, Kat. I think we will start introducing a standard boilerplate caveat that we are just a couple of drunk shit posters on the internet. We love memes. We love webcomics. We are not in any way qualified to discuss deep philosophical topics. So please, you know...
God, yes. If anyone from the future finds this, please do not consider it a mark of what our society is capable of. Oh my God, can you imagine trying to reconstruct a society based on what we think about Deep Space Nine?
Nothing of merit was discussed here. This is not a hallowed place.
For some reason, they really loved lizards who make clothes. When they're talking about food, Vinod says that most of their community had only had replicated food before landing here, and they were surprised by the flavors of the fresh food that they grew. And I've put in the notes, apparently I was in a mood on this day. I think this is just snobbery, but then I'm also skeptical about people's complaints about tinned food, I think it's just fresh. Fresh, clean food is such a kind of tag phrase in our culture.
Yeah.
And it feeds into so many unhelpful narratives about what food is and is not good for you. So I instinctively kind of went against this idea.
Yes.
And there's also something a bit bougie about Elixir's community. It isn't really driven by necessity. They could, in fact, she could go home anytime she wants, but it's like the American trad wives who play at being colonists, who live in their incredibly expensive houses funded by their families who have incredible wealth and pretending being independent.
I was in two minds about whether or not to bring up trad wives because I was getting the same vibe of that essentially LARPing, a lifestyle and community that you have no need to encounter and probably wouldn't want to normally, but you are chasing some kind of ideal that you somehow can't get some other way. It makes
Wouldn't
no
it have been
sense.
interesting if Elixir herself had fallen unwell? If her son had insisted that he wanted to get, or if your son had become unwell. I think later in the episode she does say that she wouldn't have saved her son if he did.
She does.
But I would have, that would have been an interesting extra layer. What would she do if the crisis suddenly came home to her rather than the people around her?
That is usually the point at which the core of the dictator is exposed, you know. To what extent will they shoulder the same burdens they inflict on other people as a means of control? How far have they bought into the delusion? Are they truly wrapped up in their own philosophy? You know, which could have been the case with Elixir. She does seem like a true believer. But you're right, that's a really good question to have explored. And sadly, in a 47-minute episode of a 90s space
they cover
sitcom.
a lot of ground. I don't think there would have been room for it, but it would have been interesting to have found out.
Really would.
Yeah, definitely.
Closing thoughts on this episode.
Having rewatched it, having discussed it again, I do think that the episode is deceptively clever in how the manipulation is carried out, how the dialogue is written, how it's paced, how the tension of the plot is built and maintained when the audience, after all, know that all of our characters will be safe at the end of 45 minutes. I think it's incredibly skillfully done, and I really enjoy it. As I say, unfortunately, I don't think it's ever going to be a favourite because it just doesn't touch on my own special interests, which are Jarek and Bashir in a tree. But I can't really fault it for that. You've got to have episodes like this to break up the intense character work and the comedy episodes. It can't all be Odo versus Quark.
You're
but it's a real. I think it is a really good sci-fi story. It's well told. It is very well integrated into this world, which I think we're finding consistently with Deep Space Nine. They don't just lay a Deep Space Nine coloured skin over a sci-fi story. They actually build it in sufficiently that it feels like it's embedded and it's really happening there. And there were lots of nice instances of that in this episode. But yeah, I think that's what I was left with. There are some little bits of trivia that I'll give, but what did you make of the episode overall, Tim?
I think very much the same. I would say that I've just finished, in a complete non sequitur but a good comparison. I've just finished watching the latest season of Strange New Worlds, and I am
Oh yeah.
painfully feeling the difference between a 24 episode season and a 10 episode season. Because the emotional whiplash between episodes, when they go from a comedy episode
Oh gosh.
to a serious and, forgive me, quite Star Trek tropey filled episode,
Mm.
is nerve wracking. You know, there's no space. And I love the Strange New Worlds crew. I really do. I find them really compelling, interesting characters, and they just don't get enough room to breathe. So when you talk about, yes, having more episodes where we can play more with the community and just these fun interpersonal relationships, you don't get that in other installments of Star Trek, and it's boggling me because yes, we have had a very hard episode, and later on we know we will get several more fun episodes just in this season where things progress very naturally and slowly. And I love that. And I think we've become a victim of streaming services. Listen, you've got 3 years to get the show up, running, and conclude, okay? And you don't get any longer. And you only get 10 episodes a season. God, I hate that. But that is not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is, yes, this is a fun experiment to say, okay, what happens if we take just a few characters and put them through this particular scenario? And I like
Yeah.
that inventiveness. I like that creativity, and it gave Avery Brooks a golden opportunity to do something on his own merits, which, as we said, he's not had the chance to do in many previous episodes. He's always just been the commander of the station, going, "All right, crew, tell me what's going on our
That's a
reactor."
really good point, actually. Yeah, this is probably the first time we've seen him out of that
In
completely out of
many,
that comfort
many,
zone and
many
acting just as
episodes.
a man in a situation. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's refreshing to see it like that, and it has some really incredible moments in it. The episode as a whole does feel like a bit of an unremarkable vehicle to nonetheless get some great characters and some great kind of story beats. So I think I'm very much on the same page as you there. There are some great bits in this episode, but it's ultimately not really a real
Yeah.
standout one. So there we go. So
Yeah.
lay some trivia on me, Kat.
Okay, I think some of this I've already raised. The idea of a cult was chosen by Michael Piller, sorry, not Jim Trombetta.
Oh, yeah.
He said he was interested in the idea. He commented, cultism is an issue that I'm very interested in because I've got a family member who's involved in a cult. So I had to study the issues quite a bit. That's from the Deep Space Logbook, a second season companion on from page 36. But Jim Trombetta, another writer, based his original idea for the episode on, yes, the primitivist anti-technology philosophy of the Khmer Rouge in Southeast Asia. So two different writers, both with their own take on how cults work, both with some knowledge on how that operates,
That's
and
great.
really bringing it to bear in this episode. And just one strange thing, the words at the top of each script, which you can find on the Star Trek Minutia website, every shooting script for Star Trek is on there, as far as I know. The word Zydrolian appears once in the script. In the pronunciation guide, it doesn't appear anywhere in the final shooting script. Nobody says the word. It's the same with the episode Armageddon Game. The word Zydrolian is in the pronunciation guide, so the cast will know how to say it, but nobody in the cast actually says it. And yeah, Memory Alpha have, again from the Deep Space Nine companion, a series guide and script library. That in the final draft script for both episodes, the term was retained in the pronunciation guides with the pronunciation as Zydrolian, and it is thought that it might possibly be the name of an alien race. But we just don't know. It's just a series of letters devoid of context now. It was meant to happen in 2 episodes. It didn't, and apparently never will again. So farewell, Zydrolians. We barely knew you.
That's a really good point. Okay, there we go then. I think we've come to a natural end. That was Trek, I think. A great episode. When we watched it, won't really go down in history books as one that massively affected us, despite some great performances and good character set pieces. Thank you very much.
I'll just note that in the chat, Nigel Mouse has said, I quite liked that O'Brien showed that he wasn't naturally a great engineer, but it was something that came out when he was put under pressure in the field. I like that because Starfleet is so much a band of people who are all extremely fucking good at what they do all of the goddamn time.
Yeah.
I like it when we have episodes that bring characters down a peg. And they try to engage with something and it doesn't work for them. And yeah, I like it when we learn how they came to their knowledge.
Right.
I think too often it's just they're naturally brilliant and we don't question it. They just excelled from the word go. So yeah, to know that the thing that he now excels at is something he didn't naturally excel at, and he had to be in a particular context for his knowledge to become useful to him. I think that lives for a lot of people who aren't good at exams, but are nonetheless extremely good in their fields. So yeah, that's well worth noting.
It is. Thank you for that, Nigel. And I think it does also cement O'Brien as the most relatable member of the crew. Because I, too, was very rubbish at a lot of things and only got better when I was forced to do so by jobs. So, yeah, I absolutely resonate with O'Brien on that one. Fantastic. Okay, as always, chat, thank you so much for enduring along with us. It's been a pleasure as always. It's taken over 2 hours as always. We will be back when we can damn well manage it. Hopefully in a couple of weeks.
It most likely won't be a couple of weeks. It'll probably be 3 or 4 weeks this time, but we will let you know.
We do have lives in between that we need to see to, and you wouldn't believe how actually quite draining doing several hours of this is. But we will be back.
I mean, it's spiritually replenishing. I always feel better for having done it.
It's fun
but
to
yeah,
do.
It takes a long time to write out my little notes on every thought that I have, and then delete half of them because they're irrelevant.
Well,
and then read out loads that are still irrelevant.
Exactly.
Anyway. Sorry, guys.
It's fatiguing. We're not gonna lie, people. So thank you very much for coming along and being in chat and asking your lovely questions and sharing your lovely thoughts. It's very much appreciated. I realised last week that I mistakenly said this week would be Shadow Play. It's not. It's most definitely the next episode is Shadow Play, which I recall not being a fan of. So I'm not going to. I'm going to hope that's not going to prejudice you, Kat, and you will go in with an open mind. But that is the next episode.
The thing I'm struggling with at the moment is you said that The Wire is coming up, and it's especially good, and it's in like 4 or 5 episodes time. We've got so many more to get through.
We've got to go. It's a great episode, but we look forward to getting to that, and we will get to there when we get to there, with all of you. So thank you so much for all your time and attention this week. Everyone, take care, live long and prosper, and we will see you all again very soon. Good night.